I wanted to give you a little debrief on how the OSIRIS-REx mission went yesterday. Spoiler alert, it was a success. Hello, everybody. How are you out there? It's Kelly, your solar system ambassador, and I am back for another Cosmic Monday quick chat. I wanted to give you a little debrief on how the OSIRIS-REx mission went yesterday. Spoiler alert, it was a success, but I wanted to share a little bit more information, a little overview of the entire mission, um, and talk about what happened, especially with the landing of the sample capsule. So, of course, I have my fancy slides and I have some notes here because I also listened to the press conference that they did late yesterday afternoon after the capsule returned to Earth. So, if this is the first time you're watching one of my videos, hello. I'm Kelly, and I am a solar system ambassador for NASA and the Jet Propulsion Laboratory here in Pasadena, California. And it's my joy as a science enthusiast to bring the missions and science of NASA to the public, to the public, getting tongue-tied, to the public in a fun and understandable way so we all learn together. So let's go to those slides right now. Here you see a artist rendition photo of our little mighty spacecraft OSIRIS. It launched in 2016 and finally arrived at asteroid Bennu in 2018. And then from 2018 until 2020, it spent those 2 years mapping and studying the asteroid, picking the specific target that it wanted to collect the samples from. Now, scientists at NASA knew several areas that they were curious in collecting, but once the spacecraft got there, then they were able to narrow it down to the particular area where they were going to do the collection. And the reason why they wanted to study this particular asteroid, it's a near Earth asteroid, meaning it is within our vicinity versus out in the asteroid belt, out toward Mars. And it is a very, very old asteroid. It's mostly carbon rich. So the scientists wanted to study Bennu specifically because it would give us some information, some insight into how our solar system, our planets in our solar system, formed. And that includes, because it is a carbon based asteroid, um, it will give us an idea of possibly how life started on planet Earth. Because if pieces of, say, Bennu um, landed on Earth as it was forming and started, the origins of life, this will be a way for us to get a little bit more of an insight into that ancient history of our solar system. Now, they thought that the surface was pretty rocky, which, yes, you can see a lot of rocks there, but it ended up being a lot softer of a surface than they were expecting. So, this is a very sped up video of the sample collection, and the spacecraft was going to autonomously slowly lower itself down to the surface with that probe you see there. You see that disc, that is actually the collection canister right there. And it was going to lower itself down, touch the surface, and then shoot a blast of air. And that was going to disturb the surface, the regolith, and it would be able to collect it inside that cylinder right there. And then it would start to fire its engines, and then it would slowly back away. But what ended up happening was the surface is a lot softer. So it dug in way deeper than they were anticipating. The spacecraft knew exactly what to do. It was timed no matter what time. However long the probe was down there, it was going to fire its engines and start backing away. But it ended up getting a little deeper than they were anticipating. They likened it to if you were to push your hand into a pit of balls you see at those fun activity centers, and how your hand would just go right in through the balls. This is sort of what happened to the probe. Once it collected all of the samples, it put that collection canister inside this capsule, and then it sealed itself with that fancy lid there. So that is actually the heat shield as it was going to return to Earth. So once it did the collection, it was eventually going to return to Earth. But right before it did one more pass, and it wanted to take some data, some imagery from where it did the point of impact. And again, they were able to get some data as to how deep the probe actually went. And you can see it was quite a displacement of the surface area there. They, uh, I think they calculated that about 6 tons worth of regolith was displaced, and that red ring around you see right there, that was the ejected material. That's how much was ejected from that punch into the asteroid. Once it finally decided to depart Bennu, it took another 2 years to get back and 1.2 billion miles back to Earth. And I believe several hours before it approached Earth is when the spacecraft was given the command to release the capsule. And then the capsule was basically on its own as it drifted toward, I shouldn't say drift, it was actually racing toward Earth. And eventually, yesterday, finally landed in the Utah desert. It landed at the Department of Defense's Utah Test and Training Range, which is just outside of Salt Lake City, Utah. And it was basically a textbook landing. They said that there was some rain there recently, right before the landing, so it made the ground there a little bit softer. So it just landed, and the parachute detached, and it just sat there quietly. Perfect landing. And finally, when some of the scientists approached the capsule, they made sure that there was no off gassing of anything. There was nothing hazardous being detected coming off of the capsule. So then they were able to approach and start their inspections of the capsule to make sure it hadn't cracked open. There were no holes, no leaks, or anything, but everything ended up being okay. Now, if you see these different colored flags that are surrounding the capsule, this is one of the many wonderful things about the scientists at NASA. Now, because this spacecraft was in space for many, many years, 7 years to be exact, and it came back, plus bringing back a sample from a foreign object, an asteroid, they want to make sure that now that it's back within Earth's atmosphere on the ground, people start touching it. They want to make sure that they don't accidentally contaminate the samples. So every one of those little colored flags, they took samples of the area right around the capsule. That way, if they suspect that they find something within the samples that might seem curious, then they can compare those with the samples that they took of the ground right there. And if it's something that came from Earth, then they'll be able to identify it. Once they secured the capsule and made sure it wasn't off gassing and it wasn't cracked and it was safe to travel to its next destination, they put a bunch of thermal blankets on it. They bundled it up, put it in a cargo net, and then a helicopter came by, picked it up, and flew it to a secured clean room just down the road to start processing the capsule even further. And once they got it into this clean room, you see everybody there very anxious to see the back shell of it to be removed. The next step with securing the spacecraft was once they got it slightly opened, they got the back shell off. Then another safety precaution to make sure the contents inside are not contaminated with anything from Earth here. They started to insert hoses to continuously flush with nitrogen. And it would stay that way until it actually arrived today in Texas to NASA. So once they got it all secure, they have the nitrogen lines all hooked up to continuously airing it out. Then they went ahead and boxed it up into this beautiful little silver storage container, and they loaded it onto a cargo plane to fly it back to Houston to the Johnson Space Center, which it arrived today. And you can see all of the personnel there involved in the project, including military, because this was an Air Force aircraft that ferried it back to Texas. And they got it off the cargo plane and carefully wheeled it into a specially built clean room that the scientists can eventually open up the canister, hopefully this week, and they can start processing the samples and start doing their science. One of the lead scientists for the entire mission, he has been working on this project for 20 years. So he said when it landed yesterday, he did tear up because just to know that those samples are finally back here and they can start studying those was a very big moment for him. So a lot of times, people work on these projects for most of their career, and it's just really nice to see it when it comes to a conclusion, and they can have that sort of satisfaction in what they accomplished. Now, you're probably asking about the OSIRIS spacecraft. What happens now? We have the samples, they're back on Earth. Well, NASA decided to extend the OSIRIS's mission. And once it jettisoned the sample return capsule, which landed yesterday, it course corrected, fired its engines, and redirected itself. And now it is heading to a new asteroid called Apophis. Apophis is another near Earth asteroid. It's a lot stonier, less carbony than, say, Bennu was, but Apophis is going to be passing by Earth in 2029 within about 20,000 miles. So the OSIRIS spacecraft will begin studying for 18 months. Here's a artist rendition of what that looks like. It's going to possibly do with Apophis, and it's going to study how the Earth's gravity affected the asteroid, the spin, anything else that could be of interest to the scientists. And it'll be about an 18-month mission at Apophis. So while the mission that just concluded was called OSIRIS-REx, now it's being called OSIRIS-APEX, and that is to go along with the name for Apophis. Very, very exciting. I'm really glad that they decided to continue that mission. It's such a mighty little spacecraft and it's doing really well. So why not keep it going? If it's doing great and it has enough fuel to get where it needs to go, then all the better. Well, that's all I have for you on this Cosmic Monday quick chat. Very exciting. Congratulations to everybody at NASA and the University of Arizona. They are the ones that have been leading this mission from the beginning. And yeah, now we're going to get a lot of really good information about the early history of our solar system. So, a lot of papers are going to be written. Scientific textbooks are probably going to be updated with this type of information. And they estimate that the amount of samples that they collected is about 8.8 ounces, which is roughly 250 grams. So, that should be enough for years to come and for generations to come. And they were also talking about at the press conference yesterday how they're hoping that missions like this will inspire the youth of tomorrow to pursue a STEM career to help further our understanding of our universe and to help understand things going on here on our own planet. So that's one of the hopes that NASA is always trying to help with the public is inspiring younger generations to want to study this and continue on the missions that people maybe start right now that can go on for another 20 years and people young children right now when they go to college they may be able to start working on that project in the future. So it sort of just keeps going generation after generation, which is really cool. If you have any questions about this mission or anything else that's going on at NASA, please let me know. You can reach me on all the social media platforms, but I really enjoy sharing all of this with you. So thank you so much for watching. Oh my goodness gracious. My cat is very excited as well too. So I hope you're doing well out there and I'll talk to you very soon. Bye.